tell how many people you got in?
Oh yeah, show us like right there. You see, you got one person. Yeah. All right. How's everybody doing today? I want to thank you for joining the Leave Your Legacy podcast. Back again with me, Joe Taylor. Special guest today, Charles Cobbs. Uncle Charles is what I like to call him. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
Good, good. All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off. We'll go ahead and start our first question with, tell us about your upbringing.
Okay, so we were raised in a town called Florence, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
There was 8 of us siblings. There was 3 older than I am. There's 3 younger than I am, or 4 younger than I was at that time. But for a long time, I was raised with just 3 older sisters. That was tough on a fella. But we got through it. So we were raised in Florence. Our mom was a maid, stepfather, did some auto mechanic work. We were poor, but when I say that because I just don't ever remember, having these consecutive days where I was hungry. So they did the best they could, and they gave us what we needed. So being raised in Florence, it was a very diverse community, predominantly Hispanic. We went to a small school, Florence High School. When I graduated from Florence High, we had probably 60 seniors that graduated. So that tells you how small Florence was. But we had a pretty modest upbringing. We enjoyed a lot of things. Even though we didn't have the financial means that people have today, we enjoyed a lot of things. And our upbringing, I think, in short, was a good upbringing. I mean, we weren't worried about a lot of the things that kids are worried about today.
Mm-hmm.
We used to sleep on the porch.
Yeah.
We leave our windows open.
Mm-hmm.
You can walk down the street, and you don't have to worry about a car pulling up behind you.
Yeah. Easy living.
Right.
Easy living.
You get in trouble, and the officer brings you home,
Mm-hmm.
right, as opposed to taking you to jail. So our upbringing was good, and I'm grateful and I appreciate the sacrifices that my mom and my stepdad made to bring us up.
So, I know you're coming from a small town. You played at Florence High School. What role did sports have in your life as a youngster?
I'll tell you, sports was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Sports was probably the reason I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked sports from the very beginning. And it took time to realize that I had a gift in sports. I had a talent. And that just kind of, what happened is I believe that there were people in coaching spots and in teachers that saw the talent, and they encouraged me to go out and participate. So once I did, and I enjoyed it. I really did. I wasn't the most talented person out there, but it kept me in school. It kept me focused. It kept me away from because we had drugs back then. It kept me away from that scene. I had this concept of what I wanted to do and what that was going to look like, and sports was a big part of that moving forward. I mean, even back then, I fooled myself into believing that I was that good, where I could have gone to the next level and the next level, and sports would have been a career for me. There's no doubt that sports played a big part in where I am today.
And fun fact, people, Uncle Charles is part of the all-century team. Not just the decade, but the all-century team at receiver and DB. Okay. So after high school, what'd you do then?
Well, I went to NAU. I had a good friend that, and we were brothers. We grew up together. He went to NAU. So I was basically following him.
Mm-hmm.
He went up to play football, so I was going to go up to play football. So ended up in NAU. Played football for a year. One of those things where football just kind of, I lost interest at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And truth be told, it's probably that I got up there and those talented guys were there. So I was like, yeah, this is not for me, man. I got to try to find something else to do. So, I spent a year at NAU. I quit college and came home and decided I'd get a job and get married, and the rest was kind of history, you know. So here we are today.
Yeah, definitely. So, what male influences did you have from that? We'll say not from your younger days, but let's say like the preteen days to like maybe like right before you went to college.
The influences that I had were all guys that I grew up with. I mean, those are the guys that I saw every day, and the folks that I saw every day, and the folks that that I communicated with, and that I hung with and partied with and played sports with, and that's what we did. I mean, even off seasons when we weren't in school, I mean, we'd go to the high school or the junior high and we'd play basketball all day long. And so those guys that were older than I was were the ones that I looked up to. I didn't have a big brother, right? So I was looking for that role model, and I found that in a lot of guys down, not a lot, but a couple of guys down there. Harold Smith was a big role model of mine. Rex Neal was a big role model of mine, and those are folks that kind of took me under their wing and talked to me about sports and talked to me about life, and that's what I had, right, down in Florence. And there were others, there were a number of black families down there. And I latched on to those families. We were all like a big community, big family. So, and those guys took me under their wing, man, and they helped me make it through those years, and taught me some things, right? So I certainly appreciate all of those guys down there, and I still see them and talk to them. I still love them and hang with them. And, so that was huge in my life.
So with that, if you had to give yourself some advice, what would you tell your younger self that you may, like, if you may do things differently, if any at all?
Now you're talking about my younger self in those preteen days, or?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I would tell myself, to search out those folks that you have a connection with, right? I mean, it can't be just hanging out with somebody that you can connect yourself to, and more importantly, that want you to be connected to them. My younger self, there were some times I connected to the wrong people, right?
Just call those lessons.
Yes, right. So, but I had these other guys to pull me in and say, hey, time out, let's talk about this. So my younger self is out there, man. I mean, at some point I thought I was invincible, right? And I would tell my younger self, you're not invincible. Some of the things that I was doing was certainly a hazard to my health, right? And so I'd give my younger self that advice. It's just you really have to make good, sound decisions And we often can't make those on our own, so we need somebody in our life to help us make those decisions, right?
Of course.
So, you know, my younger self, I'd have quite a bit of advice from my younger self looking back.
Oh, okay. So let's take the next step into fatherhood. What lessons have you learned? Your biggest lessons as being a father?
You know what? I've learned so many lessons. You know, because I grew up with a stepfather, and there was, you know, there was the traditional alcohol abuse, and you know, and perhaps you know, violence, domestic violence that we had to live with as kids, and I'm talking small kids. But we saw that, right? And what that did for me is convinced me, you know, that I would ever abuse my partner, my wife. You know, I just wouldn't do that, right? And in fatherhood, man, let me just regress a little bit. My real dad left when I was probably 2-ish, right? Didn't came back into our lives when I was 25, 26 maybe. And so I said to myself years ago, if I'm ever a father, that I would never leave my kids. Right? I'd be there for them regardless of what happens. I'd sacrifice anything to be with my kids and to be there for them, you know, through that age of 18, right? And so as a father, man, I learned that, you know, I had to give more of myself. I was selfish a lot of the time. You know, I learned that, you know, you can't be selfish. You really have to, you know, buckle down and be a father, right? You have to be there for them because all the things that they go through and have to endure in life, and they need a father and a mother there. You know, so I certainly, I learned so much as a father, and I'm grateful, you know, that I had the opportunity to be a father. I love my kids. I love my grandbabies. You know, and being a father is not easy. I mean, it's as rewarding as it is. It's tough to be a father because they didn't give us classes and teach us how to be parents and how to be a father. You just kind of learned OJT, on the job training.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just prayed that I did all the right things for my kids, and some of the things that I didn't do, you know, certainly I did my best to try to make that up to them. But you know, we are who we are.
Yeah. We're
all human beings. We make mistakes. I thank God that my kids came out good, right, and they're doing well. So I guess I didn't do everything wrong, right?
Well, I mean, I would like to say again, thank you. You know, I spent a lot of time growing up at your house, so I spent a lot of time watching, and I respect the fact that just like some of my greatest memories are when, you know, Charles would call me up on the Wednesday, hey man, we're going fishing. You know what I mean? So it'd be, you know, from Wednesday till, you know, Saturday morning, early morning when we left, we'd be you know, on the phone. Like, those are my greatest memories, sitting on the lake, just hanging out, listening to music. Like, I can't thank you enough. I cannot thank you enough for those memories. And let's go professionally. So once you, what have you done professionally in your life?
Well, so I'm gonna tell you, man, just right off the top, Matthew, I've been very blessed in my professional life, because I've always, regardless of what position I was in, you know, I always had a supervisor that saw something in me, right? Something in me, that talent, to the point where they would take me under their wings and they would start to mentor me and grow me, and help me get to a position where I could elevate, or I could, you know, be a mentor to somebody else. And that happened to me throughout my whole career, you know, and it's still happening to me. You know, for instance, you know, I started work for Department of Corrections. And one of the individuals there that was very influential in my life is a gentleman named Captain Billy Bursch. You know, I worked for him for a number of years. He took me under his wing and taught me the business, right? Taught me the things to stay away from. And so, you know, he was one at that level. And then I was fortunate enough to get a job with the Arizona Department of Game Use, right? And in that job, my boss was a guy I grew up with, right? So we were already tight, we were already close, right? So he allowed me the flexibility to thrive in that environment, right? Because he already knew me, he knew my work ethic, he knew me as a kid, he knew we grew up together. So it's not something like he had to try to figure out who I was. He already knew.
Yeah.
So I was able to thrive in that environment. And then I left there and went to the Tempe Police Department, where the chief and I were good friends, right? And he saw something in me too, where he came to me and said, Charles, man, I need you. I want to bring you over to help me navigate some of the things in the community that we're dealing with. And so, you know, he created a position, asked me to apply for it. I went through the process. I was fortunate enough to be selected out of a number of candidates. But then he just let me go. So, Charles, you go do you, right? That's why I brought you here, because I see what you can do. So I'm telling you, go do you. Here are the goals that are set in front of us. Here are the things we need to do. Now you make those happen, right? And so, man, it's just been a blessing for me. And I know I've dealt with discrimination and some of those things along the way, you know, but overall, you know, I've had a pretty amazing career. I was fortunate enough to retire from Tempe Police Department a couple of years ago at that point, and now 6 months later, after I retired, I had the chief of police of Mesa call me, right? So, Charles, man, I need your help, right? And these are people that I knew, and these are the people that knew my work. And so it's gratifying to me, you know, to know that there's a value in what I do, right? There's a need, not just a value, but there's a huge need in what I do in terms of community and law enforcement engagement, right? And so, I went to work for Mesa for a bit, worked with the chief, Chief Batista. He's another mentor of mine, you know. And then, you know, a few months after that, I get a call from the Tempe Union High School District saying, Charles, you know, hey, you know, are you available for this job? You know, we have a job. Could you put in? Are you interested? So absolutely, I put in and was fortunate enough to be selected for that position, which I currently hold as a Director of District Safety and Security. And my boss and I get along very well. And one of the reasons that is because he was a principal for many years at some of the Tempe schools. And while I was at Tempe, one of the things I did was reach out to the principals and meet with them and talk to them, and talk about, you know, the school resource officer, talk about what we can do to better serve the students and the staff in the district, talk about how our officers are performing on the campus. You know, so, you know, again, I've had a pretty amazing career. You know, I always think there's more, right? I always think that I have more to give. So I'm constantly evaluating where I am today, right? Specifically today with everything going on, you know, Charles, do you need to retire, or can you still put those skills to use, you know, to help try to mitigate some of the things that are going on right now. So again, it's all about continually evaluating who you are, what you want, what the need is, and I try to do that, on a pretty regular basis.
And coming from law enforcement and in the black community, is kind of they kind of look at you funny. I've never seen, anytime you walked into any room, nobody's ever looked at you side eye, never nothing. You always much love, always tons of respect. So with being in Tempe, I mean, just with your relationship that you built alone, like what are some things that you can see that we might be able to do in the schools to try to reach kids?
Well, first of all, there's a huge need in schools, right? I mean, I think we still have an issue with all students getting a high quality education. And a lot of that depends on the school you go to, but a lot of it is based on skin color. We're categorized as black people or Hispanics or people of color. We're categorized, and oftentimes when we walk into a school, we walk on campus, people will look at us and say, well, this person can only learn at this level. Not the highest level, but this level.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I think that's one thing that we certainly need to focus on, because I think all kids deserve the opportunity to get the highest level education, while they're going to school. Another thing, I think we just, as parents, and I got grandkids in high school now, but as parents, we have to get more involved, of course, in school and with talking to the teachers, communicating not just with the teachers, but with the administration, right? With the governing boards, with everybody, all the stakeholders that are part of that dynamic, that high school dynamic. We have to get more involved in that, and we have to let our voices be heard, because there are kids that we're sending to those campuses, and what we provide as a district to those students, then parents and stakeholders should be part of that conversation, of course, right? Let's talk about this. Let's come to some agreements. What is it that we're looking for, right? And is my kid getting the same education as all the other kids? So there's a lot that can be done at the school level, and I think K through 12 for sure. It has to be a conversation. We have to start that conversation.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. Because I coached last year at a high school, and it was just, for me, I'm not a teacher, but just with football alone, you heard a lot of parents saying, well, I didn't know. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. We want, like I said, we have to be more involved with what we have going on with our kids.
And that goes both ways. I mean, there has to be more robust communication that's meaningful, right? On both sides.
Yes.
Parents and the district and the administrators, there just has to be that communication, and I think that sometimes that's lacking.
Okay, so I know this is an awkward question. A lot of people don't like to talk about themselves, but leading up to, what do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, that is an awkward question, man, because number one, I just haven't been that type of person to talk about myself, right? And so, coming into a career field, as a young man, the last thing you're thinking about is a legacy, right? And as you advance through your career, and I'm just speaking for me, I still am not thinking about a legacy. Now I get it, that legacy means different things to different people. When you talk about your legacy, that could mean, I left a building that I helped build or helped construct, or I left some money. That could be your legacy. But most people, I think, when they talk about legacies, they're talking about how they're viewed, by, a general population. If you talk to this group of people, will everybody pretty much say the same thing about Charles Cobbs, right? So I'm not going to say that I went into this trying to create a legacy for Charles Cobbs. I went into this wanting to serve people. I went into this wanting to make a difference. I went into my career field wanting to connect people and solve problems. I went into my career field wanting everybody to walk away from the table feeling better about what's going on and moving forward. And so I have had that gift over the years to bring people together, right? And to talk to people in a language that they understand. So people will, I hope people will tell you about Charles Cobbs is that, he was a great listener. He listened and he took action. I mean, he didn't just listen to us, but he actually heard us. And then actually put an action plan in place to help resolve the issue, or worked with us, right, to help us resolve whatever our issue is, whatever our concern is, whatever our problem is. And he was a guy that was very accessible and open to all people. Not just his community, not just people of color, all people. You can talk to him, right? You can call him, and if he can help you, he would help. And so, in a sense, I guess that's the legacy that when I walk away for good, when people say Charles Cobbs, and I hope people will get a smile on their face and say, you know what, he was the real deal, man. He was somebody that really wanted to help people, right? All people. He wanted to bridge the gaps, between community and law enforcement. He wanted to work with people on both sides, to try to come up with something that's equal and good for both sides. That was his goal. That was his drive to do that, right? And oftentimes it's about when you deal with people, it's about if you're going to accomplish something, they have to respect you first, right? So if they respect you, then they're going to listen to you. And then more importantly, they're going to hear you, right? And we don't always have to agree we can agree to disagree. We don't always have to agree. But I think that there's something to be said for having somebody at the point that people are willing to listen to. And so, I think, if you want to talk about leaving a legacy, I hope people remember me for that specifically.
And they will, because if anybody who knows my Uncle Charles, he's never been a yeller or a screamer. Like the way he's talking right now is the same way he talks to everybody, and people just perk up and they listen. That's love and that's respect. All right, last question. So, what is your advice on how? I know you kind of touched on this in the last question, but on how to leave a legacy. If you were talking to, one of the grandkids or one of the nephews, what would you tell them?
Well, and again, I think I'm going to be repetitive a little bit here because these questions are kind of intertwined with each other. I wouldn't talk to them about legacy. I'd talk to them about their commitment and their drive to succeed in what it is that they do, right? I think everybody, first of all, you have to find your niche. You got to find what you're good at. You got to somehow try to figure out what your talents are. And then once you do that, you have to build on those, right? You really do. You have to educate yourself. You have to go through the training. You have to do all those things to help you grow that niche that you have, that passion for whatever work you're going into. And then the last thing is you have to commit to that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be committed to it, and you have to be there, both feet in, eyes wide open to do the job,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you do that, the legacy is just created. Yeah, you don't have to go into something trying to create. It's created for you.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to gravitate towards you depending on what it is you do. They're going to gravitate towards you, but you just need to go in, eyes open, say, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I've chose for my life, because, that, when we start talking about a career that spans over 20, 30, 40 years for some people,
Mm-hmm.
all of that is what's going to make your legacy, man. And you don't have to do anything but do your job
Mm-hmm.
and be committed to that, right? And treat people right,
Yeah.
right? Even though you may get treated badly along the way, you still treat people right,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything. It's one of those kinds of things. So, but that's part of your growth,
Mm-hmm.
and that's part of building this legacy that we're talking about. It's treating people right, not just doing your part to make sure that your family's fed and that you have a good life for you and your family, but treating people right.
Mm-hmm.
as you move through the ranks, or as you go up, as you elevate up through a company or department, still treat people right, man. That's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everything else just comes. Everything else is just a bonus for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, if you do that, the acknowledgments will come, the awards will come, all that will come. And all you can say is, I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
I was just doing my job. But what that do is that confirms for you that you did your job well,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what that does. So all of those things are just confirmation for you that the things that you decided for your life as a career, you did very well,
Mm-hmm.
because of all of these things over here. So these things are just measurements for that.
Yeah. Unc, I appreciate you. Thank you for giving me some time today to sit down and talk with you. My folks out there, thank you guys for tuning in and listening. We have an announcement coming later this week, so be on the lookout. The merchandise is going to be on sale. The website's going to be up. Thank you guys again. Unc, I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, nephew. Love you.
Much love, much
Love you.
love.
Love you.
All right, y'all. Thank you.